Right. We thank you very much for officials for your good work on that paper. We come now to the 2017 Local Government New Zealand Conference and Annual General Meeting. As councillors are no doubt aware, it will be held this year in Auckland. So we have a bit of flexibility about the representation at it without incurring travel and accommodation costs. This paper also refers to representation not only at the Local Government New Zealand Conference but at the AGM after it. So Warwick McNaughton, welcome to the table as our Principal Advisor. Can I ask you to speak to the paper? And then we not only have to consider the recommendations, but it would also probably be appropriate to determine who the representatives will be at both the conference and the AGM, unless councillors are of a contrary opinion that you'd like a bit more time to think about that. Warwick, could I ask you to speak to the paper, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of points, as you've already mentioned, there are in fact two events, and one event is the conference and it's followed by the annual general meeting, and so we're asking this meeting to approve attendance at the conference and to appoint the 4 delegates to attend the AGM. As the Mayor has mentioned, it's in Auckland this time, costs are down. Typically in the past, or at least last year, we approved attendance of 6 to the conference. Our suggestion is that because it's in Auckland, you might like to think about 9 governing body members. In terms of the annual general meeting, we are also suggesting in the report that you might like to think about one of the delegates being a local board member. And that's really about, those are the key points, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Warwick. I'll formally move the recommendation, but we have gaps in the recommendation to fill in. Have we got a seconder for that, Professor Collins? Can we now have questions, specifically questions to our Principal Advisor, if there are any questions? Councillor Simpson.
So just a question around the point that you made about local board members. So Auckland Council is the only, a local board representative. Auckland Council is the only council that has local boards, right?
Yes.
So when we're going down to conference around New Zealand, everybody else has community boards. Do they send community board representatives as well?
I think that's true. Local boards members have attended the conference as well, but in the past have not been one of the formal delegates to the annual general meeting.
So my former local board colleagues will remember that local boards get asked if they want to send someone and they can pay, and we have money for that. So that will still, is that process still going to happen?
In fact, the recommendation going to local boards is 2 per board.
Right. So this is just to be able to vote at the annual general meeting on behalf of one city that only has local boards.
Yes, the organisation, Local Government New Zealand, I think it's important to make the point, it's an incorporated society, and the members of the society are the councils. So any vote is a vote saying this is the position of the Auckland Council. It's not representing the individual position of any of the delegates.
Thank you. It's cleared my thinking. So as a shared governance model, what we're showing is a shared...
That's correct.
Yeah, I get it. Thank you.
Your Worship, if I can add to this, the reason why we put the option of maybe including a local board member is some local board members have been wanting to get more involved in LGNZ, and the decisions on being in the National Council have up to now been made by the governing body. We've been engaging with Local Government New Zealand, just saying quite strongly, you need to recognise in your constitution the fact that the Auckland governance model is different. So what we're trying to do is just being more inclusive, but we only have 4 positions for the AGM.
Thank you. You've clarified my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any further questions?
Sorry, Mr Mayor, can I just a quick comment, and it's a slightly opportune comment, not directly related to the question, but addressing Councillor Simpson. There is a huge push by local government New Zealand to recognise more effectively the whole local board structure. They're increasingly aware that the local board structure is unique and that we need to find better ways to do that. So working along with Mayor John Carter of the Far North, who's the Deputy Chair of Zone 1, which I chair, we're working really proactively at getting local board members absolutely and enthusiastically involved, and Pippa Coombe is working with that. So that's something that when we finally come up for a breath of air, we're hoping to see a list of innovative, exciting and invigorating workshops that will be hosted by Zone 1 that will be well attended by many, many local board members and hopefully councillors. So it's well recognised and a work in progress.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Richard Hills, question?
Yes, it's probably more of a question for you, Mayor Goff. Just maybe thinking that potentially I could be one of the names up there, as I'm the rep for the policy group for LGNZ, and I've been down once as your representative, and I'm on the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs as well, which is LGNZ related, so it might be maybe.
That's a campaign speech. We'll give consideration to that. Thank you, Councillor Hills. Councillor Simpson? Oh,
I've given my
sorry, no, you just weren't transferred across. I was going to invite you again. No further. Sorry, Councillor Darby.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm looking at the program and I'm thinking, what is in here for me? What's going to inspire me here? And I'm used to some inspiring contributions at Auckland Conversations. I go to just about every one and they're outstanding. And I have to be really honest, I am struggling to find much inspiration after your address, of course, which is in the opening.
I'm glad you've qualified that, Councillor.
But for me, the program looks pretty weak. And I do note the closing keynote. That looks interesting. But between your pōwhiri and the closing, I can't see much on offer for me and possibly us. And I just really want to convey that. I think our Auckland Conversations is doing extraordinary work with 800 people in attendance every 3 or 4 weeks. But this program looks weak from Local Government New Zealand.
Thank you. That's a campaign speech not to be appointed to the conference. Look, I've looked at the program myself, and I may share some of those views, but the program has been set and we're faced with that. What makes a conference, of course, is not just the simple program, but the participation of the delegates and the networking around it. So I think as the Mayor of the host city, I'm obliged to go. I think we as a council are obliged to have good attendance at it, and we have a further obligation to try to make that as productive a conference as it can be. Auckland is a big force in local government New Zealand, and maybe we've got to look, and talking offline again later to Councillor Hulse about how maybe we can help shape the agenda rather than simply being the recipient of it would be a good point. Right, Councillor Deputy Mayor Bill Cashmore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to back up what you've said, in this case, the actual agenda's there as part of it. Probably a more important part is the actual ability for us to be able to sell and explain the Auckland story and the journey that we're on, because other parts of New Zealand have a little bit of difficulty understanding us and our journey. And I think the vital ingredient for us to contribute to this conference is to sell our story, explain Auckland and the great things that are happening here. And that's the opportunity that we need to make happen.
Thank you, Councillor Cashmore. Councillor Collins.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say I don't plan on being one of the delegates from council to go, but I just wanted to know if it was possible within the program for councillors to be invited perhaps to the pōwhiri, because I just think that as the host council, there are certain events where I think we probably should attend, and I think the pōwhiri, even the Poroporo Ake, would be worth that attendance. I don't want to that might just be a bit left field to make that kind of a suggestion, but I just think it would be a good way to express our welcome to delegates who are coming from all over the country, if that was possible. That's all.
No, I think that's an excellent idea. We should try to propose that. Okay, opportunity, no other questions. Is there any discussion around this paper? Councillor Denise Lee.
I'll just make a comment that we have a historic need for more connection with LGNZ from here. I haven't actually had that journey myself, I will admit, but I wonder whether we should be. So comments on the agenda and comments on whether we are or not attending, I don't think are helpful in the grand scheme of us needing to, what was your words just before, Deputy Mayor, or maybe it was you, Mr Mayor, around shaping the agenda, and I mean the agenda in its fullest sense. So I would like to see great attendance, and if you can't go to the full thing, I think you're right if you saw that we look at least turning up for the beginning and the welcoming side of things. We've got a big role to play in the country in terms of local government structures. So we often leave it to those who are reps to the zones, and that's it. And the rest of us don't hear or know what the journey is, and maybe that needs to change. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Good point. Any further discussion on this paper? Then I'm just going to foreshadow what we need to do before we vote on item B. Councillor Wayne Walker.
It's just a very brief comment. I won't talk at length, but essentially a number of councillors I know have a concern with the choice of venue, which is the Sky City Casino. I know I'm one of them. I just want to put that on record. Enough said.
Yep. I think that decision has been taken. I understand the concern of some councillors around it, though I have to say I go to lots of conferences at the Sky City simply because that's where the organising groups are holding them. So, yeah, maybe this is slightly different, but it is, I think, a decision that's been taken that we don't have influence over. Councillor Collins?
Thanks, sir. Is it possible to amend or add an amendment for the inclusion or the invitation for this council or governing body to at least attend the welcoming pohiri or celebration? I don't know if that will have a reflection on cost, but I just think as an exercise of us reaching out to those who are attending, it would be a good...
I'll seek advice on that. I would have thought for the opening ceremony that we'd have some flexibility to do that, and that would be seen very positively. I mean, we'll check it through with LGNZ, but I think it'd be seen very positively if all of our councils came as part of that welcoming ceremony without being encumbered with the cost of being a delegate. But we'll check that out because I think the point that you made was well made. Thank you. If I can just come to, before we start going through the agenda, on the recommendation, before we decide which 3 delegates we appoint, we have to determine, normally it will be the Mayor, and that's in recommendation A, normally it would be the Chief Executive Officer, and then the question we have in front of us, do we appoint 2 members from the governing body, this is for the AGM, 2 members from the governing body, or do we split that 1 member from the governing body and 1 member from the local boards for them to determine? So maybe I can invite some discussion around that, and we actually need a resolution on that, I think, Sandra.
It's not for, well, if you take you, because you have to be you, and a chief executive is actually only 2. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that leaves, if you accept those 2 things, there are 2 delegates left for the AGM. Now, we're talking about the AGM only, and not the local government conference. So you are restricted in your votes. And the issue that is set out in your paper, but not on our recommendations, is whether we decide of those remaining 2 slots, it should be 2 governing body members or 1 governing body member and 1 local board member. Marguerite, can I invite you to comment on that?
Yes, if you refer to paragraph 13, we have outlined the names that we would recommend you choose from for the AGM. And you have Pippa Combs' name there, who would be a probably a logical representative from the local boards if you decided to go that way.
She holds a role.
We may not be in the position, if we decide to have a local board representative, I agree with your suggestion, it's very wise, but it's outside our authority to make that decision, I think, on behalf of the local boards. We could make that suggestion to them, but in the end, they would have to determine who their representative was.
So a suggested alternative is we add a recommendation about invite, if you decide so, invite Pippa Combe to be the fourth representative at the AGM. So we'd have
You can only have 3 delegates.
Process question, sir.
Yeah, yep, thank you. Let's just
Process
hold that for a
question.
moment.
So
Councillor Simpson.
We're running ahead of ourselves, aren't we? The first thing we have to determine is whether or not the 2 spaces left available, if one is already you
Yes.
and the chief executive, first thing we have to decide is if those 2 spaces are 2 governing body members or 1 governing body member and a local board.
That's the first decision
And
we have to
then
make.
After that, we'll cross what happens after that
Yeah,
next
okay.
as far as process.
Let's have a discussion around, I'm making a presumption that councillors agree it should be the mayor and the chief executive officer. Let's have a discussion now around whether the 2 remaining slots be filled by the governing body or split between the governing body and the local board. So can I invite any input on that question from councillors? Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. I mean, I personally think you should have the deputy mayor there, and I mean, I would have thought Councillor Walker, given he's a Zone 1 rep, but he doesn't seem to want to go there, even though he's got that position. I mean, we're not going to make him gamble, but
Hang on a second.
it does concern me. But
What are you saying about me?
no, I'm just saying that you're the Zone 1 rep, so I would have thought that you would have been the person that would be the
I'll
delegate.
take a call next
But
from
anyway,
Councillor
so-
Walker, but if you can conclude, please.
And I do think we'll have 42 local board members going to this conference, which is huge. There's very little involvement from the governing body, and I think we should have the 3 delegates being the governing body, because we've still got plenty of opportunity for 42 local board members to input to our delegates for decisions there. I think that's really good. The other issue that I've heard over and over from local boards is you made us choose, not very many people. It was really hard for us to choose. We've got 149 local board members, and I think that's a really tough call for 148 people to choose, or 149 people to choose one person. How long that will take, I don't know, whether we have the time, but I just think until Local Government New Zealand have clarified the positions of local boards, and I hope they hurry up, because our model's here, and it needs to be acknowledged that I think we just have, for me, it's governing body members as delegates. That's my view.
Okay, I'm totally open-minded on this, so I do really want to get feedback from councillors. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Worship. I'm going to be very simple. We are a shared governance model. This is Auckland Council's representative. I think we show that shared governance by taking a shared team. I would support a local board person and a governing body member.
Can I procedurally ask you maybe to move a recommendation that one of the representatives to the, now we're talking about the AGM, but because there's lots of opportunities for the local government conference, but so that we've got a recommendation on the board that one of the 4 representatives from Auckland Council be a local board member, and then we've got something to focus on in our debate.
I'd be happy to
Happy to
move.
second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Do we have, Councillor Walker, did you want to comment further on that? Or?
I'll just comment. I'm entirely supportive of that motion on the part of Desley, and I would note that Pippa Combe has already been representing local boards at Zone 1. We've already had a process to arrive at that appointment. And frankly, they sit alongside us, so we need to give weight to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further, Councillor Hills?
Would it be, maybe just to make it easier, if we just put the deputy mayor in and then invites Pipicoom or another local board member in that 3 spot. So,
Well, I just want to, if I may, I just want to sort out the principle first of whether there should be a local board member, and I want to, this is a decision for all of councillors to make. Once we've sorted that out, we're one step further down the track to determining who the delegates should be. Any further discussion on that? Have we got that on the screen yet? We're working on that, so if somebody else wants to take a call while we're waiting.
I will, Mr. Mayor.
Deputy Mayor.
So I completely endorse the co-governance model. Everyone knows that. My concern is that this particular AGM for the LGNZ conference, we are going to be electing a new president and executive. And that's going to be a big call, so some institutional knowledge and history of the people involved will be quite important. So I just think councillors need to think about that in the context of the decision that they're about to make.
Thank you very much. The big importance, I think, of this AGM is that after many years, Lawrence Ewell is standing down, and we will be electing a new president of Local Government New Zealand. Okay, how are we going with the? Okay, we've got a new resolution A. If there's no further discussion, it's entirely up to councillors to make the decision on this one. It's been moved and seconded that one of the 4 delegates at Local Government New Zealand be a local board member at the AGM. Maybe I'll just put that and we'll have a demonstration of opinion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no.
No.
Can I maybe do it by show of hands just to be absolutely certain about this? So if, and I'll ask our officials to do a quick count. Those in favour of the resolution, can you please raise your right hand? Left hand, I think.
1, 2, 3, 4, yips.
That's 10. Those opposed? I'll declare that resolution passed by 10 to 5.
I abstained, Mr. Mayor.
An abstention from Councillor Mike Lee. Thank you, Mike. Okay, so we then come to what was A and is now B, which is